Well, now we come to our main event of this previous week, which was the Ring of Honor Supercard of Honor on Friday night, April the 1st at the Curtis Colwell Center in Garland, Texas. That is a suburb of Dallas. As a matter of fact, I think while I was there in Texas, World Class ran Garland as a spot show. One time, I think we drew more people than were in the building for Ring. It was at a high school gym.
Kerry was going to show up, but he decided he wanted to have an ice cream cone, and he stayed home.
That's true. That may be one of the times the boys didn't show up. Anyway, I got the countdown show on this. Somehow I recorded it. It was saying Ring of Honor, the screen on the cable system, Ring of Honor Supercard of Honor countdown or whatever starts in whatever seconds, and then suddenly, bam, it just popped up, and there's a shot of the entranceway, and here's people coming to the fucking ring, and the announcers are already talking. Did I miss something?
I know that, as is typical nowadays, there's also a partner for the pay-per-view event or the premium live event that distributes it on a phone. I think they were with Fight TV. There were various other people, so maybe some of them were airing a pre-show, a pre-show, and us
pre-show
plebeians only got the pre-show.
Well, and I didn't watch it either because it came on and Cheeseburger and Eli Isom were on their way to the ring. I know Cheeseburger. He was a wrestling school student / security guy / merchandise guy / gopher 12 years ago, and now he's graduated to the dark match, I guess. But anyway, him and old Eli, who I've never heard of before, were in the ring, and Tully Blanchard comes out. FTR just fired him from AEW. Now apparently he's going to go take over Ring of Honor. And he brings out the two newest members of Tully Blanchard Enterprises, who is a Samoan guy named Toa, and another guy named Khan. Not Khan.
Yeah, just what wrestling needed, another Khan.
Another Khan. K-A-U-N, Khan. Khan! And I never heard of either of these guys. Both of them looked great, but I think we know where this was headed, and Cheeseburger and Eli's combined weight is 116, so I didn't watch this match. But again, I'm not trying to knock Tully. Tully is coming off as elderly. And he's probably in better physical condition than I am as far as being athletic. But as Vince says, perception is reality. So let's go to the main show. Ian Riccoboni and Caprice Coleman on the microphone. I listened to the commentary on this show for the first time since the last time we watched Ring of Honor, because I didn't have 4 different people screaming at me. I didn't have a bunch of Japanese words and phrases being emitted like, Fujinami with Tourette's out of a guy with a sock on his fucking head.
Fujinami with Tourette's? Is that what it sounds
yeah,
like?
It's what he sounds like. Ian Riccoboni is a youthful but authoritative sounding play-by-play guy that sounds like he knows his business but is conversational and works great with Caprice, who's an ex-jock but has the gift of gab. And you can listen to what they're saying because they're not calling the matches for basement marks. They're calling the matches for people that are watching a wrestling match. What the staging, there were well over 1,000 people in the building from what we were told on the internet, but
yeah, I was going to ask you that.
The hard camera shot was a stage, a screen, and 5 rows of ringside on the other side of the ring. I'm not blaming Tony Khan because I guess this was, Ring of Honor, this was their, production, right? Still the last one.
Did they share that building with anyone else?
Well, not at the same time.
But earlier, like in terms of the setup, is it one of those things where another promotion had that building like right before the Ring of Honor show?
I don't think anybody but them could afford that building. That's where AEW runs also. I think all the little outlaw shows were at a hotel somewhere or whatever.
That was really the only negative about the highlight of the show, was just the way you heard a crowd you never saw.
Yeah. And when they panned around, everything else was dark. And I know it's probably a bigger building and they weren't completely full, but couldn't you have arranged it where we'd see some of those people? Let's quickly go through some of the early things. Swerve, Strickland, and Alex Zane. I've never seen Alex Zane. I've seen Swerve Strickland. Zane is allegedly from Lexington, Kentucky. He came out to the ring in a furry red robe, a red ponytail, and a red pirate eye patch that he then took off. He has sight in both of his eyes, but he wore an eye patch to the ring because it looked good with whatever the fuck that rest of that outfit was. And I'll see what's going on here. I'll give it a second. That's what I gave it. It says Alex Zane's first move was a head palm shoot off. And then they started with the cartwheels. And then Zane hit a backflip and covered the guy for a 1 count by leaning back on him like a recliner. As I'm wasting my time. What else happened? Anything?
Oh, I really didn't like it. It exemplified a lot of what I really don't like about modern wrestling, which is too many guys. It's just a choreographed, a synchronized routine, whatever you want to call it. It doesn't feel in any way natural. It's just guys running past each other, running at each other.
Yes, they just run back and forth willy-nilly.
Yeah, I don't really like that. And the other thing was, and I forget exactly what it was, but I had Ring of Honor by that point on in the office on one of the monitors, and then also in another room so I could see it wherever I was if I had to walk around. If I had to get food, I could keep watching the event. And at one point, it was just nonstop moves and this and that. And then finally, I think like Swerve laid on top of Zane, and I think it was Caprice. I don't know if it was Ian, but they go, and he's applied a hold. And I was like, what hold? There is no hold. There's not been a single hold this entire match. And it made me think like Dax Harwood and Punk, any of the FTR matches. You know what really separates it from a lot of the other things? They actually do holds. There's actual wrestling. How many wrestling matches have wrestling nowadays? And they called it a hold. There was no hold applied. There was nothing. He was on top of him. But, no, I really didn't like it. I don't like the style of match. I was curious how the audience was going to react to FTR. The FTR match, I should say.
Yeah.
Based on this. And it made me think, and I know Ring of Honor is the brand, and I know that, what is it? Supercard of Honor is like a big event.
Yeah, that's WrestleMania weekend every year.
But like boxing, you can't tell me it wouldn't be a bigger event if it was just Ring of Honor, Briscoes versus FTR with an undercard. Because to me, that's what it felt like.
But that's the only thing people wanted to see on this, even when the matches were announced. But again, I haven't watched a complete Ring of Honor show since 2012. We have watched the Briscoes do some things, and I've seen some clips. But I got to be honest, I was thinking, when we get to the next match, that's when I really thought this. As a boy, all the Ring of Honor fans that existed in 2009, when we tried to upgrade the thing and bring in some mainstream talent, and they all got up in arms and had the pitchforks out for me. What are they thinking now? What have you done to my boy? The Ring of Honor fans had to be ready to set themselves or somebody else on fire over this show, because this was a complete wipe your feet on anything that Ring of Honor ever stood for. And this would have, go back in Supercard of Honor 2010, 2011, 2012, compare it to this card, and I know they've had issues, but a billionaire just bought the company and has a variety of mainstream talent at his disposal. You tell me that this was a pay-per-view. This was one match that people wanted to see, and a more of Tony Khan's questionable judgment. The next match.
But let me just say, though, to that point, I didn't feel ripped off paying $30 just because I wanted to see the one match. And I think that's interesting too, because remember when AEW first started, I said, oh, $50, this is a ripoff. I don't mind $30 for a main event I want with a bunch of preliminary or undercard matches. It's like boxing. And that's why they should have just pushed the match.
Especially when the main event delivers.
Especially when it delivered. And boy, did it deliver. But we'll get there.
Well, not yet, because the next match was Ninja Mac. Ninja Mac came out. He was 5'2", maybe 140 pounds, in a red outfit and mask. Again, did they just go to the concession stand and find a guy waiting on a hot dog and say, hey, can you fit this suit? Get dressed. You're working. Tully Blanchard comes out and introduces another newest member of Tully Blanchard Enterprises, Brian Cage. They're going to try him again? And he's not going to listen to Tully. He'll drive Tully out of his mind. Because Tully would probably be able to help the fucking guy if he was able to be helped if he'd listen. So Ninja Mac dives over the top rope to jumpstart it, and Brian Cage catches him and power bombs him on the apron. Then they start the match, and every time Brian Cage does something, the midget will do a nip up and start running again. And then somehow, obviously, Brian Cage beat him. My God, you don't even have to comment on this if you don't want to.
Well, I'll just say I think this kind of gets filed under Booker of the Year. Booking sometimes is more than angles and matchmaking. It's how you juggle your roster. And he found a way to keep Brian Cage and also keep him out of that locker room where so many people hate him. Kudos, Tony Khan.
But you put Ninja Mac on a pay-per-view.
I had never heard of him before.
Whoever he is. Well, no, nobody has. But that's the point. They couldn't at least get a responsible-looking athlete from their multitudinous roster to come in and do a job for Brian Cage. They have to. It's like going to Ruth's Chris Steakhouse or Morton's, and on the menu alongside the lamb chops and the giant filet mignon and the prime rib is a goddamn ballpark hot dog. And you're like, wait a minute, I'm paying premium prices to eat in this place, and one of their choices is a goddamn gas station hot dog?
They should have gone the other way. Had the other surprise be Grizzly Redwood and have him bump Brian Cage all around the ring. That would have been a real tribute to the old days of Ring of Honor.
I guarantee it would have happened. It would have happened. I went out of my mind. I had apoplexy one time. We're trying to get Michael Elgin over on TV. He's going to he's going to drop the partner on his head, Grizzly Redwood's partner. Then he's going to beat up Grizzly Redwood in this handicap match until the big baby face comes to try to take the tag and help Grizzly out. And I swear to God, by the time they finished running spots to make Grizzly Redwood look good and shine and excite the people, it was time to go home, and fucking Elgin hadn't got a lick of heat on him yet. That's why I turned around to Delirious and said, who are we pushing here? Anyway, the next match. Lee Moriarty versus Jay Lethal. Seriously, is Ring of Honor now the YouTube show? You got Jay Lethal, one of the most decorated wrestlers in the history of Ring of Honor, one of the most talented guys in the business today, and you're bringing over one of your underneath guys from AEW on a pay-per-view. And it was long and it was competitive with Jay Lethal. And not only that, but this at all wasn't the Ring of Honor atmosphere that I remember and that you saw in those days, 2009, 10, 11, 12, the streamers, the people screaming at the top of their lungs, the chants. They were with all the angles and the talent. They knew everybody. These people are sitting on their hands. I'm not sure I blamed them. with a substandard lineup like this,
Well,
2 matches with nobodies, Lethal in a cold match with a guy they've never seen before.
The other thing is it a Ring of Honor crowd or is it a WrestleMania crowd that's in town?
Well, both, because traditionally people would come in for WrestleMania, but the people who wanted to take the opportunity to see Ring of Honor live for maybe the first time or one of the only times they would hop on the tickets early. And I would assume it's the same thing of all the people coming to WrestleMania. These are the people that wanted to see Ring of Honor. They're seeing a ring. Anyway, so finally, after a very long match, and Moriarty hitting roll-up after roll-up for 2 count, 2 count, 2 count, Lethal finally, Sanjay Dutt, his friend, was at ringside watching with old gutless Gary Jester, and Lethal finally hits a ball shot, hits him in the nuts to beat Lee Moriarty. It got massive boos. Well, he hits him with a nut shot and then the lethal injection. But they switched Jay Lethal heel on a rookie underneath guy. And then Matt Sydal, who was on crutches with Moriarty because he's injured, he comes in the ring like, what'd you do? And Lethal cooks his crutch out from under him and beats him up. And I like that part. But, and so Sanjay comes in and the referees comes in and they get Jay off and the people are chanting, fuck you, Lethal, because he turned heel. But my God, is that like switching fucking Barry Windham heel on TBS against Gary Royal or Gene Ligon?
I don't know the answer, and I'm going to guess you don't either. But we've seen Lee Moriarty on AEW TV, no relation to Kathy Moriarty. And
or Professor Moriarty, the arch nemesis of Sherlock Holmes.
Did he come from Ring of Honor? Does he have a background or a history with Ring of Honor?
I don't know that he's ever been there before, ever. I thought they started him in AEW at their school.
That was what I thought too. I don't know. I mean, they obviously wanted to turn Lethal heel, and their way of getting there was having him do jobs on national TV for a while, to the point where he finally gets upset after the Moxley match and hits the guy in the balls, breaking the code of honor, I guess. And I don't know. Next level booking.
So we followed that up with not the women's championship, but the interim women's championship. So apparently they had a woman's champion. Something happened to her, so now they had an interim champion, Willow, but she faces Mercedes Martinez, who, as we know, is an AEW contracted talent. And Mercedes beats her and wins that time. Oh, my God. They're wiping their feet on everyone. Did I miss anything on that match? Because, seriously.
I didn't pay too close attention to it, other than was it said who the actual Ring of Honor Women's Champion is?
They might have, and I didn't care enough to find out.
Why did they just create an interim champion when Becky Lynch had to forfeit the belt when she was pregnant?
Well, because they don't do that over there.
Okay, just thinking out loud.
That's the reason. All right, here we go. This is what we've been waiting for. It's a shame that we had to get it on a zombie promotion in a, low-budget pay-per-view, but here we are for the Ring of Honor Tag Team Championship, Mark and Jay Briscoe against FTR. And this was what everybody wanted to see. And this was, obviously, if there was any doubt about that, nobody followed it. After this was over with, it was an hour into the show. They put this match on, and I don't have any idea what their thinking was, because why did they think that anything could come after this? Especially any of these matches. But
their thinking was probably their world championship should come last, and I guess the TV and pure title come after the tag team title.
And then the title of dog catcher could come after that. Jesus Christ. I understand world championship going on last. Anything else, when you're putting these other matches that nobody gave a shit about on after the one that everybody came to see, you're just killing those guys. You're just making their job harder. People had asked me on a couple of emails and several tweets the past week or so, how would I have set this match up? How would I have laid it out? How would I have started it? How would I finish it? How would it flow, whatever? And my answer is, I don't have any idea. Because, I mean, honestly, part of it was beyond anybody's control, but I wouldn't have been in this position or allowed myself to be in this position with any talent that I was booking. But this match was insanely unique in that every fan wanted to see it. People were calling for it, wanted to see it before it was booked. Everybody was excited when it was booked. With, I can't even say no build. There was a little build, but it was all done by the talent, none by any of the promotions. And it was probably the most horrible build to a match that people wanted to see that I've ever seen in the wrestling business. You got two promotions, but one of them is dead. And you got two TV shows, but one of them hasn't produced new content in 3 months. The other one of the teams is not allowed on because one of the executives is a big fucking pussy and got his head up his ass and his panties in a twist about people tweeting. So you can't have one team on one show and you can't have the other team on the other show because there is no show. The babyface and heel dynamic is completely fucked up here because FTR have bounced around from babyface to heel in their presentation and who they're wrestling since they debuted in AEW. The Briscoes would be the babyfaces because they're the home team for Ring of Honor and they've been there since day one. But at the same time, FTR's best utilization is when they're the heels and are running the fucking match. They didn't do any angles for this past shoving and scuffling at Final Battle because it was a rush job. And then they've just talked about each other on Twitter and social media with no help from the actual promotion that's putting the show on. And it still stole the show. Tell me another time that has ever happened in the history of wrestling. So I wouldn't know how to, I wouldn't have known how to put it together because that's such a unique situation that I'm gobsmacked that it's actually come and happened like that, taken place like that. But your job, my job, Tony's job, anybody's job as a promoter or a booker is to take a match that the fans already want to see and give it the biggest buildup possible. And these guys, the talent did all the work. Nothing was promoted here. So that's why I didn't know you don't know how to lay the match out to who's the babyface and who's the heel, what has gone on between, who has the rawest emotions. Are the babyfaces feeling put upon? So when the heels are in the ring, the babyfaces are going to come from the back and jump them from behind and jump start it and they have a big brawl? Or are they going to come in the ring and start slow and have a classic matchup, which is kind of what they did? Or they, what frame of mind is each participant in? You couldn't really go by it. So they just had to, in a cold vacuum environment, start out and have the match that they wanted to put together, which turned out to be fabulous, but with no help from the promotion on what the people would want to see ahead of time. So, having said that, on the entrance of FTR, the fans woke up. And then here come the Briscoes, and they can sell tickets the way they look alone. They look out of control, and that's what you need in wrestling. The rest of these fucking sissy-ass pussies that wouldn't spit on the sidewalk or double park are just fucking... There's no, Undertaker said it in that interview, not his Hall of Fame. There's no men anymore. These guys are all four able to kick somebody's ass if they're let loose, and they were. And the holy shit chant broke out before the match started. And the Briscoes were baby faces to the crowd. And FTR somewhat played into that by refusing a handshake, but you know, they've been pretty much sabotaged now, FTR, with the back and forth turns, babyface, heel, manager, no manager. But again, from the start, from the lockups, the chants, tag team wrestling, you know, Dax came out of the head scissors, spit in Jay Briscoe's face. It got a huge pop. They worked the people. They worked the audience. They brought them into what they were doing. They didn't just go do a routine that it's like you're watching it through a fucking window where you're not connected to it. You're not involved in it. And they got some heat on Jay. Jay came back. Mark took over on Cash. All their shit looked good. The chop battles, the commentary added to it. Mark with the Cactus Jack elbow. They had a fight on the floor that was called for. Everybody lost their goddamn composure. And they busted Jay Briscoe open with a boomerang under the bottom of the table. That was an interesting way to use furniture. And Jay's bleeding and they're getting the heat on him. If wrestling was still like this, I'd still want to be in it. Suddenly, we went back 30 years to when this shit was palatable and watchable. And it can be done. So then they got some pretty vicious heat on Jay, but he got the hot tag to Mark, and Mark made a big comeback. And they hit Redneck Boogie and got a 2 count. And then FTR came back. Dax with the slingshot powerbomb. Cash with the splash off the top. 2 count, huge pop. ROH chant. Dax is bleeding now. The Briscoes foiled the big rig and hit their own for a 2 count. Everybody's selling. They took a couple of big floor bumps, but just one for each guy. And finally, Jay vertical suplexes Dax off the apron to the floor, and that was a bit much. But then everybody laid there and sold to the point the doctors had to come and check on him. And Mark's bleeding. And the referee starts the count, and everybody slowly rolls in and barely stands up. And they go into the double 1-2s in the middle of the ring. And it just, they kept building and building, and the people are freaking out. And again, Jay hits a neck breaker. Mark hits a froggy bow, 2 count. And finally, the Briscoes went for the doomsday device. They could barely pick Dax up, but they got him, and suddenly Dax rolled forward and Mark missed, and then they hit the big rig on Mark, 1, 2, 3. And yes, this was changing another Ring of Honor title and beating 2 more Ring of Honor icons, but nobody could argue with it. This was the best tag team match that's taken place in any promotion that we've seen in how long? Years? Would it be years now?
It's been a while. I'd have to stop and think about the last match of this caliber, but let me just say right here, what a fantastic match. Loved it. It looked like a fight. It looked like a struggle. If you just watch the wide camera shot and you see the blood on the ring, you see Dax, you see the Briscoes, they don't just look bloody, they look dirty.
Yeah.
It's been a grueling fight. This was fantastic, and we'll talk about the angle, I guess, in a moment, but I felt bad, actually, for any wrestler that had to follow this because the crowd was there for this, and even if they weren't, the match was so good, it would have ruined the rest of the show for any wrestler following it, more than likely.
And I mean, it's not like you couldn't see that coming a mile away. That's why when I saw an hour into a 3-hour show and this match is going in the ring, and they went 45 minutes. They needed the time, but at the very least, this should have been next to last. Go to some interviews and some packages to let the people take a piss and calm down. and then bring the world title match in and let them start off slow. It still wouldn't have followed it, but it wouldn't have buried the other matches.
And one other thing I'll say, because I haven't watched one of their matches in a while, because I've never kept up a Ring of Honor. I've had some bad feelings about some people in Ring of Honor for a while, but from the moment they come out, and I'm curious, a lot of the people who really haven't been exposed to them, what they will end up thinking, boy, the Briscoes are fucking stars.
Oh, yeah, that's why I've been saying that for 15 fucking years.
Man, they feel real, and they're unique, and they're crazy, and I wish there were still people making compilation tapes, and I could just get a compilation of all the FTR matches I really like, because I'd like to watch this match over and over again. Really, really good.
And also, to be quite honest with you, you ought to get a compilation of the Briscoes, too, because then think about this. They're in their late 30s. They're the same age. I know they look a little rough. They're the same age as the Hardy Boys. So they've still got some mileage, and they actually have talent. And we'll get to that in a second. New Ring of Honor champion, standing ovation for the match from the crowd for both teams. They go for the handshake, and FTR stops and does the "we're not worthy" bow. And they get hugs all around, so apparently this will not continue because they've hugged each other now. So we got it once, we'll apparently not get it again. Best tag team match we've seen in years. The people are chanting, "Thank you, Briscoes." And suddenly, I was like you. I was going to save this on the DVR because I thought I'm going to want to go back and watch this some more. I almost don't want to now. They made it just to the finish line, and here comes the Hardy Boys in to fuck it up. Now, again, we're exposed to school children playing wrestler after what we've just seen with these four men. And they come in and get on the Briscoes and do their super kicks, and maybe they might have done one of those stupid little knee lifts or whatever. And FTR come out and make the save and cut a promo and challenge them. They already announced the match is going to take place next Wednesday on Dynamite. Now it'll be for the Ring of Honor Tag Team title. But they challenge them right there, but the Hardy Boys refuse after ruining what was almost a perfect, flawless segment. They show up. Now I'm afraid that just because I'm sure they can sell to Tony Khan, "Oh, Tony, imagine how much heat it would get if we won the Ring of Honor tag team titles from FTR. Those fans would really be mad." Now, they'd be disgusted is what they'd be. There's a difference between ticket selling heat and disgusting heat. Nobody wants to see these two little fucking pricks either beating up the Briscoes or beat FTR again. Now, if they'll give them their win back they should have given to begin with, I'll sit through this fucking match. But otherwise, again now, with the kids and FTR, and I don't see how this is going to turn out any different because the Hardy Boys are too smart ass to want to do what's right for business when they can get even with the Briscoes because they were in Ring of Honor with the Briscoes, and I'm sure they felt underutilized because there's the Briscoes, the best tag team in wrestling. And then they come into, they're in AEW, and here comes FTR, and they say, "Oh, they're too good. We got to bury them." So how do you think that old Matt and Nick Hardy felt when they sat there and saw these two teams do something in that match that they are completely physically incapable of doing? How do you think that sits with them when they think that their little Lollipop Guild group calls them the greatest tag team in wrestling, and they're sitting there watching two other teams so far above their heads they can't even fucking see them? So they're going to have to do something to get even.
I think they sit there and they always say, "What would Shawn Michaels do?" Because that's what I feel like with FTR.
No, Shawn Michaels drew money.
Hey, but in terms of how you handled yourself at different points, if there was a match 2, and match 2 makes you think there's going to be a match 3. If there's a match 2 and FTR lose again with the promise they'll win the third one, that's Shawn Michaels. Don't go with that promise. And then if FTR is defeating the Young Bucks there, They deserve the win back, but also what are we doing with FTR? The Young Bucks are in this feud of sorts in the comedy section of the show with the Undisputed Era, who have stolen belts. Now the Young Bucks have stolen belts. That's what I fear. They're going to beat FTR to bring all the belts together because they want some pictures of themselves holding all these belts.
Well, there you have, and hey, Hardly boys, call Paint Your Life. Take it easy on the if you just want a picture with all the belts so you can sit and fondle your gonads and look at them, just call Paint Your Life. Don't take it out on the wrestling fans and the quality wrestlers. Anyway, closing thoughts on this match. I wish we were going to see a bunch more of them. Obviously, that's not going to happen, or elsewise everybody wouldn't have hugged and kissed at the end of it. But they set a nice standard there. Again, the WWE should see that and go put the Briscoes in counseling for something so they can be all contrite and apologize and put them on national television. Cannot somebody have a goddamn bit of logic, common sense, and gumption to reward the real talent instead of the people who don't hurt anybody's feelings and suck on our television? Your thoughts, closing thoughts.
Fantastic match. Like you, sad if it means we don't see another Briscoes FTR. But as WWE Hall of Famer and motivational speaker The Undertaker said, never say never. Anything could happen in the WWE, or in this case, something else that Tony Khan owns. Really great match. I think, and maybe I'm wrong, it's certainly right with a segment of the audience, but I think it's a growing segment. I think the Young Bucks have gone from heels with some heat to really having a lot of go-away heat. And I feel like they're building upon go-away heat, not building heat. And
well, because Tony don't know the difference, does he?
I don't think they know the difference either.
No, they wouldn't. They've never been in the wrestling business.
But that's my 2 cents on the Bucks. When the Bucks came out, again, whatever you want to say about the Bucks, big success as headliners for Ring of Honor. This was their fan base for a while. This was the fan base that built AEW.
Well, no, because the Ring of Honor fans have turned on them because they know they're the ones that wrecked the company. They let all those jackoffs come in. They catered to them. They took over the program. They instituted all their comedy bullshit. And then when they left to take the billionaires' money, they took their little cult audience. And meantime, all the booking had been centered around all of them. So they left Ring of Honor high and dry with nothing going on, having to start from scratch.
The reaction they got when they came out, it wasn't, boo, the Bucks are heels. Certainly it wasn't, boo, they're real-life heels.
It was, oh, they're going to fuck this up.
It was, God damn it, these guys are going to come out here and fuck this up. And, you know, that's where I think they're crossing that line and getting go-away heat, because I think it's happening in a lot of their segments, not just this fantastic match. Yeah, look, people are going to pop for the flips. This is an audience that comes to jump out of their seat for near falls. There are certain things they're going to react to. But I think the Bucks have more go-away heat right now than people realize or want to accept, but we'll see how this plays out.
Well, there were still plenty of matches, even if there wasn't plenty of energy in the crowd to cheer for them. The Ring of Honor TV title followed this. This had to be sabotage, or do you think they just said, fuck it, we'll just send Rhett Titus and Suzuki out to just cool them off after this? It's a hopeless cause. Try to get anything to follow it. But poor Rhett. Rhett Titus, another guy. He was there from the start of Ring of Honor. He trained under Delirious in the Ring of Honor wrestling school. He worked on the ring crew. Even when he started getting used, he was still working for less money per night than most of the guys because he had started there as a local guy and part of the school. But he worked his ass off. He changed his physique completely, and he's ripped. And he's been there all these years, and he's a quality guy. He works hard. He's loyal. He's the TV champion. He comes in to the Ring of Honor pay-per-view, And this time they don't bring some underneath guy from AEW to beat him. They bring in Minoru Suzuki just because I guess he was in America for WrestleMania weekend, that has never held a championship in the United States of America from what they said. And they put him in a squash match. Was Suzuki sweating by the time that he hit Rhett Titus with a finish and sat on his chest 1, 2, 3?
No.
So now here's another guy that emblematic of Ring of Honor and has worked his ass off and is in his 30s, not his 50s, and looks great physically instead of, I know Suzuki's a badass that can pick his teeth with most people. He looks like a frail senior citizen that can barely move with either a fucking horrible case of hemorrhoids or something shoved up his sphincter. And he's bow-legged. And he beats Rhett Titus and wins the Ring of Honor TV title in a glorified squash match. How old is Minoru Suzuki?
I think he's in his early 50s. I'd have to double check.
But the point is, so now they got to fly him back over here to defend the Ring of Honor TV title? Or was this just something to do for the weekend because who gives a shit? Because there's no 53, and there's no Ring of Honor TV show anyway. Currently. But there you go. And I guarantee you that Tony Khan has his ass so far up the fucking country of Japan, has his head.
His ass is so far
or his
up the
ass so far up the country of Japan's head, or his head so far up the country of Japan's ass, that he thinks that the fans in that building were happy to see a Japanese legend squash their TV champion, even though it makes no sense. But they saw Suzuki. Yeah, and they sat on their hands the whole time he was out there because they couldn't follow the tag match. Speaking of not following the tag match, the next match for the Pure Wrestling title. And this is something else that Ring of Honor innovated. And it's got specific rules, which they not only showed on the screen, but which Ian Riccaboni and Caprice could explain to us and tell us. Limited amount of rope breaks, etc. It's all about scientific wrestling and pure athleticism. Josh Woods versus Wheeler Yuta. Josh Woods is the champion. Josh Woods is a shooter. He's a former MMA fighter. As a matter of fact, when I managed Dan Severn, what was it? A little over 5 years ago now at WrestleCade, 2016, my last match as a manager, I managed Severn. He wrestled Josh Woods, who had just started then. And Josh was greener to pepper tree. But now he looked pretty good, and he's built, and he's a real wrestler. And he looked like the kind of guy that could put a ham sandwich on your back and starve you to death if he wanted to. And he's in there with the new Daniel Garcia. Wheeler Yuta is everywhere. His tights are still hideous. And he's still the same that we talked about earlier in the show, the same guy that's been a flunky until 2 weeks ago. And he comes in here against this MMA fighter and pins Woods and wins the Pure title. A guy that's been jerking the curtain for AEW again comes into Ring of Honor and wins one of their titles. You mean, talk about Dusty and Crockett botching the UWF invasion. This isn't even an invasion or an infiltration. This is some homeless people apparently wandered onto the property, and Tony set the dogs on them. That's the way they're treating the Ring of Honor talent. The judges for this match, for a technical wrestling match, were B.J. Whitmer, Christopher Daniels, and Colt Cabana. I can see Colt Cabana as a judge on the comedy portion of America's Got Talent. I don't see him judging a wrestling match. I liked Woods. He's got a different style. We've covered Yuta. So, but again, if you intend to ever push somebody, what you've done with them previously affects that. So you need a plan. And the crowd was dead again. And Yuta beat the real shooter in a pure wrestling match. And the AEW job guys have about got a clean sweep of all the Ring of Honor belts, except for FTR, who are a step above job guys in AEW. Again, Ring of Honor fans from 10 years ago, my turn at the wheel doesn't look so bad now, does it? I didn't take dirty toilet paper and stick it in your fucking mouth. Anyway, your thoughts on that contest, Brian?
I can't say too much about the match just because, unfortunately, at this point in the night, after everything I had already watched and also knowing I had to watch so much more, and then I just watched a lot of Wheeler Yuda. It's a hard name to spit out sometimes. I've just recently watched a lot of Yuda. I ended up skipping a lot of this match.
Wait a minute, is that Joe Pesci? Is it? Did you say Utes?
Two Utes.
I've just watched two Utes.
That was Fred Gwynn. But other than that, I'm guessing they give him the pure title and somehow it ties into whatever he's doing with Danielson and Regal and Moxley and their Fight Club.
Well, there's one more title to go for the Ring of Honor World Championship.
Can I stop you?
Yes, you can.
Before this match, had you ever seen Bandito before?
Never. I have heard of him. As I've mentioned, I haven't been following Ring of Honor except for the Briscoes, few things, but I'd heard of Bandito. I'd never seen him wrestle in Ring of Honor or anywhere else. And that's why I've seen Jonathan Gresham. He and Lethal were a tag team for a while. They had some great team moves, and I think they split up. I've seen him wrestle a couple of times, still not a ton of it, but that's why I was like, old Bandito better be a world beater and better just make people drop their teeth on the floor to be able to follow the tag match. And so I was interested in seeing how did Bandito, a Lucha Libre star, suddenly become the Ring of Honor champion? Samoa Joe, Bryan Danielson, CM Punk, Tyler Black / Seth Rollins, Davey Richards, Jay Lethal. Bandito? One of these things is not like the other. And I wanted to see whether this was going to be flippy lucha or whether Bandito could actually work. So that's where I'm at on that one. Had you seen Bandito?
I had not. I had read about him. I had heard about him. But because I don't watch Ring of Honor, and I hadn't in a while, and nothing before this match and that tournament we watched really has pulled me into it in a very long time, and I don't watch Lucha right now, I had no idea who the hell he was.
Did Bandito steal your heart?
His mask did. What an interesting mask. I'd not seen a mask like that before. What'd you think of that?
He looked a little like Zorro if Zorro was a highway robber and
I was thinking John Merrick.
Oh, come on.
It's kind of like an Elephant Man hood. What was that mask?
Like the hood that Gary Hart used to put over Abdullah the Butcher's head when he wanted the butcher to stop assaulting people. But at least we know now that Tony Khan finally answered Chavo Guerrero's phone calls. Because now Chavo is back as the manager of Bandito.
Okay, hold on. I don't want to spoil it. Well, we're going to spoil what else happened in this match. So Chavo, who's to the best of my knowledge, never been Ring of Honor ever.
Never.
For several weeks at most, was all of a sudden the manager of Andrade in between Vicky Guerrero and Jose the assistant.
Right.
Then he disappeared to do a show.
Goes to Australia.
Complained about the fact that he was told his job would be safe, and he found out his job was not safe in any way. Then goes public with that. I guess they reach out to him and say, we'll make you the manager of the Ring of Honor World's Heavyweight Champion, Bandito. Sounds like a pretty prestigious role. But his reign of management of Bandito lasted hours, and even Bandito turned on him. What was this?
I was about to say, not only does the guy, the first time he manages the guy, he loses the world title. For the first time in history, as Caprice Coleman called it, for the first time in history, a guy asked for his own manager to be kicked out of ringside by the referee. I'll get rid of him. He's sure. Yeah, I don't want him. The fuck is going? So anyway, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Gresham is very short, but he's built like a tank. But honestly, the early part of this was like watching a match in a library because people were so quiet. And they couldn't just run off and do things at 100 miles an hour because then they'd run off and leave the people and they wouldn't be reacting anyway. But I was waiting for Bandito to impress me. He's not bad. He's not like a outlaw lucha goof like a lot of the flippers on AEW. He's very coordinated. But I didn't see anything about size, work, look, personality. You can't see his face. That blows me away. That he would be a world champion, that he's somehow special. Gresham is technically excellent, needs a bit of the personality. They worked really hard and seemed serious, but there was no violence to this. There wasn't a fight, a struggle. It was wrestling with no emotion. Bandito has the mask. You can't see his face. Gresham needs a high gear emotionally, not necessarily physically, but emotionally. And this wasn't violent. This wasn't a fight. We've seen it already. And again, this was hurt by coming after the tag match. And also it went over 20 minutes when we're closing in on 11 p.m. Eastern, 10 Central out there. And finally, Bandito super kicked Gresham, and Gresham turned to sell it and poked the referee in the eye. So Gresham goes for a springboard, but Chavo, with the title belt, flails it up to hit Gresham, and he fumbled it. And the belt went up over Gresham. Gresham takes the bump, and the belt went into the ring. Chavo reaches in and grabs the belt, pulls the belt out. And Bandito turns around and gets pissed and tells the referee to kick his own manager out. You would have thought they'd have worked something like that out before they came out. Hey, if I get in trouble, Chavo, help me, or I don't care what happens, don't help me. So then they did a bunch of false finishes, and they started going 100 miles an hour, and the crowd kind of got back in it by that point. And then suddenly Gresham rolled him up. 1, 2, 3. And apparently Gresham had been the interim Ring of Honor champion because Bandito during COVID had either gotten COVID or couldn't come into the country because of COVID. And then they'd both been claiming the title, and this was the unification. So Gresham is the new Ring of Honor champion. Thank you for coming, Bandito and Chavo, your new spot there. And then you knew something was going to happen because Gresham stays in the ring. Bandito and the referee leave, and Gresham's got a microphone. And he started talking, and honestly, I've never met the guy, and I'm not trying to knock him, but I maybe understand now why that he might not have been the most over Ring of Honor champion of all time, because when he started talking, who was it said one time about that food was so dry you had to eat it in the rain? Well, his speech started out so dry, somebody needed a garden hose. And he basically got out that his mission was to make Ring of Honor pure, and the pure title and the pure wrestling and whatever the fuck. Here comes Jay Lethal. I know what you're trying to do, Gresham. You're trying to send everybody here home happy, but after all that I've done for all of you and everybody, I should be the first guy to challenge for the Ring of Honor title. And again, Gresham's response, he started, and it was like listening to a librarian speak back. And then Lethal pie-faced him, and they start shoving. Sanjay gets in, separates him, turns around, nails Gresham. And Sanjay, who, by the way, we haven't seen on a wrestling program in forever, is he going to be Lethal's manager? And from what I like Sanjay too, and he's a fine young man, but I think Lethal's got the promo thing dicked compared to Sanjay. So I don't know but Sanjay and Lethal beat up Gresham, put the boots to him. Lee Moriarty comes in for a save. Goddamn, I'm glad I wasn't down and in need. If I had to depend on Lee Moriarty, they gave him the lethal injection. And I was just thinking then, because I'm looking at the people not really giving a shit, and I'm seeing Jay Lethal kicking the shit out of job guys. And I'm thinking I had not only better angles, but bigger names on Ohio Valley Wrestling Television when it was a local wrestling school. And just then, music, Samoa Joe. Again, wrestling gods, we have some hope, but I'm going to try not to get too over the moon about this because who knows what'll happen. Maybe Samoa Joe will be Daniel Garcia's next victim, the battle of the fucking chokeout holds. But Joe comes to the ring, gets face-to-face with Lethal, chokes out Sanjay Dutt, taunts Jay to get in the ring, and we close. So at least Samoa Joe is there now. But again, are we going to get to see him? Are we going to get to see him regularly? Are we going to see him the way we want to see him? Or is he just another shiny new toy that'll be prominent for about a week and a half?
Well, they've already announced he'll be on Dynamite on Wednesday, and they put out a graphic that Samoa Joe is all elite. And thankfully, he showed up in his wrestling gear.
Oh, I'm sure that for the next 2 to 2.5 weeks, we'll see him everywhere. He might pop up on Tony Khan's driver's license picture. We don't know, but then after that, who knows what might happen. Again, they have loaded up on talent that, my God, we're going to, when all this dies down, and after this week's Drive-Thru, when we talk about whatever they do at WrestleLamia, if they separated the Drek from their stars and their good talent, they've got a heck of a roster. They just have no coherent plan whatsoever on how to implement that roster. Samoa Joe could be a benefit in a variety of ways, not the least being a grown adult fucking man that looks like he could hurt somebody. Also being an experienced veteran can possibly, hopefully, if they'll listen, teach some of the guys some things. And he's over to not only the Ring of Honor audience, but also the AEW audience, independent wrestling audience. And he'll be a boon to them. I just hope that they don't.
If they use him there. I mean, again,
if they don't boon him like they booned everybody else. I'm sorry, I mean bone.
Are you talking about
a lot of people?
Are you talking about using Samoa Joe in Ring of Honor or in AEW?
Both.
Okay. Because I wasn't sure if you were thinking that they're going to use him exclusively in Ring of Honor or something.
No, I'm saying he's over with all those audiences. He's still got it in him, I would assume, unless he's had... Because remember, they didn't strip him the NXT title when he won it because of an injury. He said he got COVID. They just took it off of him. We never saw him again. They didn't know what to do with him in the WWE or NXT or how to treat him or what the fuck, back and forth. Okay, here he is. He's showing up for work. He's ready to go, and he can produce. Give him something to work with or make him look like another flunky like all the rest of your acquisitions lately, Tony. One or the other, I'd hope for one rather than the other. But either place, Ring of Honor or AEW. And they can't just exile certain people to Ring of Honor if there's no crossover, then they're just making a secondary program. You've got to jazz up and revitalize and have some life in Ring of Honor so that you could have some interest. If it just becomes the YouTube show where they train the greenhorns, then that's a waste of fucking time. They've already got that. If some people want to dominate Ring of Honor to get a leg up in AEW, then they'll be chomping at the bit to go in there and competition in Ring of Honor could be described or portrayed as fierce because of the leg up that you can get in OVW. In AEW, and there'll be crossover back and forth amongst different stars, and many of the AEW superstars are previous Ring of Honor champions. And if you build the thing up to where it's an entity that has a chance to be competitive with AEW, and there's some cross promotion involved, then you can do a proper fucking rivalry. If it's just a glorified YouTube show where you send all your cast-offs, then who's going to fucking watch it? That's my thought.
Well, that was Supercard of Honor. Unfortunately, just the end of our first binge of watching wrestling this weekend. There is so much more.
I forgot this is my show, isn't it?
It is, thankfully.
I was almost waiting for you to wrap up, but I don't have to do that anymore.
No.